Lindy Chapman, welcome. So great to meet you. Super stoked to be here. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. I've heard so much about Ask DOSS from Nick Saka and had the pleasure and honor of also speaking with Bobby the other day. Before we get into the genius, innovative world of high tech and voice technologies and everything that you guys are doing around the future of real estate, you did mention to me that you had a gig around music, a momager back in the day. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that? We're
Too
curious.
funny. Yeah, you can be very innovative when you've been a mom of four and you move every 1 to 3 years. You just learn to be chief innovation officer. And we had some friends of my kids. They wanted to get their music out in the US. They loved the idea of Texas. They were big Friday Night Light fans. And so I was actually consulting for a restaurant at that time that had a stage. And so I said, well, why don't you come to Texas? I can at least get you in there and I can do a client appreciation party. And so they did come. They're two brothers. Their names are Sean Duggan and Kevin Duggan, and they had a band at the time that is not together anymore. They're still doing their things separately. But anyway, they came and we ended up getting them in House of Blues. I got them at another place up in Denton, Texas, and several other venues around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So that was my stint as a momager, but it was really fun.
Did you innovate momager? I've never heard that before.
No, they did. They did because I was the mom of their friends, and I just treated them like a mom would. Right? You're proud. They were brilliant songwriters, brilliant musicians, and so yeah, it was a really fun thing to do, and it gave me an excuse to get their mom to town. And she was a friend of mine. We knew them when we lived in Europe together. And so it was a good chance to get a lot of our friends together. My kids all flew into town. So there was a little bit of an ulterior motive, was to get my kids back to Dallas. And then it was a great way we did a client appreciation. I had a lot of my clients. I primarily at that point worked in relocation. So I had clients that I moved from California and from Canada, I had friends from Germany. I had clients from Chicago. And so they all came to one of the events and they got to meet other people that had moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area from areas that they had moved from. So it was a really fun way to show appreciation to them.
What kind of work were you doing? What kind of clients were you working with? How were you helping them?
Well, I was in real estate, so I was a realtor, but I really focused my business. I kind of niched down, as we say in Texas, on relocation. So I really, because I had relocated a number of times, our move to Dallas was really hard. It was a really challenging relocation. And even though the company spent literally hundreds of $1,000s to move us here, it often fell apart when it came to the real estate agent. And so I built a business to ensure that not only the transaction was done smoothly, but they had an agent before, during, and after the transaction was complete. Because when you're moving to a strange new city, you need somebody who is there throughout that process.
What exactly went wrong? In other words, what's the core problem there with the real estate agent, or that you noticed or that you experienced?
Oh, that's a long sorted question, and I could get into a lot of trouble really telling you the truth. But honestly, and I don't know how much you understand how the real estate industry operates. I didn't know how it operated when I was the client. And there's 3% to the buyer's agent. It's a fixed price. It's not fixed. The industry says it's not fixed. It's fixed because there's so many hands in the pot when it comes to that 3% buyer's agent commission. With relocation, the relocation companies, the brokerages are taking about 50% of the agent's commission. So you have that client that needs the highest degree of care being handed off to a realtor who's making half of their normal commission, or maybe not half, but certainly less than their normal commission. And so often you kind of end up not getting the degree. Now, that doesn't mean they're not great agents out there. I had some phenomenal agents that took such great care of us. But then when I did have an agent who didn't feel like they had the time for me to justify the little amount they were getting paid, it was so noticeable. So for example, we were moving to Dallas. We had been in Germany. The agent who was helping us, we had to use a certain brokerage. She was one of their relocation agents, but she also had other clients in town the week we were in town that were not relocation clients. So she's making probably 90% of their commission, right? And she's only making 50% of ours. Also, she thought we were going to buy a certain price point home. Well, our home's not important to us. We're not looking at one of the Texas McMansions. We had 3 kids in private and out of state college because of the nature of our moving around. Our kids weren't going to a state school. So we had a lot of expenses that she wasn't looking at when she was thinking about the price point we might be buying. And so all of a sudden she became less interested in us. And we just didn't get the time that we needed. The other challenge is you're moving to Dallas, Fort Worth, and we don't know if we want to live in Frisco or Fort Worth, right? It's a huge metropolitan area. It's the size of Connecticut. And so really, I shouldn't have to choose one agent to work with. I shouldn't have to choose an agent from the beginning. There needs to be, and we didn't have a destination service provider, which some companies provide, but we really needed a large overview and to be able to find where we wanted to live and then find a real estate agent to help us with the transaction. And it would be somebody local that would be there after the deal closed, which is why I'm excited about what I'm doing for DOSS social agents. There's another company I consult for called Pivot. They're actually launching in Dallas next week. And they're actually in town this week from New York City. And it's an amazing platform for people that are relocating to get connected to members of the community that are not realtors. We have a couple of social agents on the app that are guides. And that's what you need before you hire a realtor.
And what excited you? Let's put it this way. What were you doing and for how long were you doing it before you came across Bobby or DOSS? And
So I've had kind of a weird, interesting journey. I was a mom for 20 years. I was in the corporate world, had my second child. My husband was moving up in his company. He was making more money than I was. We were both stressed. And I had two kids. The person that was helping me take care of them ended up getting a job. I didn't have anybody to take care of them. Childcare is expensive. It was almost costing me more to work than I was making. And it was like, one of us has to quit. One of us has to. And I was thrilled to stop. I loved being a mom way more than I loved going to the office. And so I stayed at home to be a full-time mom. I did some entrepreneurial things, but we were moving every 1 to 3 years. My pulling back allowed him to move forward and to take whatever next opportunity came forward. He was with the same company for 17 years, but he had numerous jobs. It allowed us to move to Chicago, to North Carolina, to Connecticut, to Georgia. Eventually he changed jobs. We moved to Europe. And what a great experience that was. And I did different jobs. My husband always used to laugh and say, who's Lindy going to be this move? Because I would have to recreate myself. But when we moved to Dallas and after that bad experience, I was like, this industry, there's so many great people in it. I want to be one of those great people. And I got into it. And what I realized was that the industry is broken. It wasn't that there were bad agents. I was not getting the right agent. The industry is not agent friendly. And so that's how I got into the business, built my business. I had to leave my big brokerage, the traditional brokerage, to finally break 6 figures in a city where I knew no one. But it was really by again, just defining who I was as a real estate agent and focusing in on relocation. And then we moved to Boston. And so I just built this business. I'd finally gotten it after 3 years. I'd finally gotten it to the 6 figures that I wanted. I was building my relocation company. And then my husband got a job offer in Boston that he couldn't refuse. So I thought, well, I'll just build my relocation company as a national company, move to Boston. And the world shut down. That was in January, and the world shut down in March. And of course, relocation shut down. And so I just started interviewing people. We talked about the challenges of relocation, and I interviewed everything from expats and really from around the world to innovative thinkers like Bob Berg, who wrote The Go-Giver. And then I ran across Bobby Bryant. Loved what he was doing. It was on a big scale, kind of the way I thought real estate should work. But then I went to the website, and Bob Berg's 5 Laws of Stratospheric Success were on the website. And I was like, I gotta go there when he asked me to. And so when he asked me to join, it was a no-brainer. And so I've been with them since, I think, September last year. And then, as luck would have it, we just relocated back to Dallas. So
I want to get more into DOSS. Also, I didn't realize how recent this has been for you, even since September. Right now it's June. So
yeah.
Probably a lot has happened since then. But I'm also just curious because a lot of our entrepreneurial, creative, innovative, like our mind is looking for different things along our journey. What was going on for you as you were relocating? Was that a positive experience? Were you asking yourselves different questions? I'm curious about that because it's a unique experience. The constant.
Yeah. So, I guess I'll go back to a couple of different things. Our move to Germany was so awesome. It was the hardest move I've ever had. But our relocation coordinator, who started her own company there, her name's Cheryl Koenig, she'd been an expat. She was an American. She had moved as a young adult for her first career to London. And so she really understood the challenges. Her arms also weren't tied by some of the rules that real estate agents are tied by here in the US. So when she was showing me homes, she was able to tell me all about the neighborhoods. And she would say, literally, this is where the Americans live. This is where the Germans live. This is where the South Koreans live. And I was able to look at her and go, don't put me where the Americans live. Like, I want to assimilate in the culture. I want to learn German. I want to be with Germans. I don't want to be with the Americans. But in the United States, as a realtor, I can't do that. I'm steering. There are so many things that I can't say. And good, bad, or otherwise, it's very helpful to know, where you belong. And that's not discriminatory. That's not, I wasn't discriminating against Americans because I didn't want to be with them. I really wanted to assimilate in the culture. I had a cultural buyer not about 3 years ago call me, and she's like, I had an agent and she just kept steering me towards people of my kind, people that looked and sounded like me. And she was from another country. And she said, I bought a home there. I didn't know that's what that neighborhood was. And I bought a home there and I realized that it's surrounded by people that look and sound like me. And she's like, that's not where I wanted to be. I want to be American. And so that's just one of the dilemmas that can happen. I think it's one of the things that Pivot will help solve for people to be able to find it themselves. So anyway, that was a sidetrack, but I mean, that's kind of my gold standard of relocation, is what Cheryl Koenig and her group did. Everything from driver's licenses to community, doing a community event every year for those of us that had moved, and just providing a standard of care from the time we arrived to just even think about if we were going to move to Germany until literally the day we got on the airplane. And that kind of service was just the kind that I wanted to provide. Fast forward, moved to Boston, and we sold our house in 2019 in December. I begged the relocation company, please don't make me list it traditionally. I promise you, all I need is a sign in the yard, great marketing. I couldn't list it, even though I was a realtor. They wouldn't allow me to do that because it was through a brokerage, RMC, a relocation management company. And so they wouldn't let me do that, even though I put on Facebook, hey, I was going to sell my house, and I found a buyer who offered me about $10,000 less than the appraisal, because I had gotten it appraised because of some homes that had sold in the neighborhood for a low price. And I just asked the company, I said, look, why don't you just pay me $10,000, $15,000? I'll make this go away instead of paying $45,000 in commissions. They wouldn't do it. And then, so the move to Boston was really expensive. We weren't able to choose our own housing. They chose it for us. It didn't work out very well. And yet there were all these great Airbnbs for $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And they were paying $10,000 a month for an apartment that was loud. It was really bright because of the city lights outside. And there were some other issues, and yet they were paying this premium price for it. And then when we went to go rent, because I wasn't going to buy, I was so excited because I'm like, okay, I know the questions. I've been a realtor. I know the questions to ask to find the right agent. And I said, here's the deal. We're going to rent the first year. We don't want a brownstone. We want parking. We want air condition. My daughter had gone to college in Boston. I knew I didn't want anything that resembled anything she had lived in the city, but we wanted to be in the city. I have just the person for you, they told me. And they send me an agent, fantastic guy, but he was a single family home, suburban residential specialist. And I needed a high-rise apartment locator. And it didn't go well. I ended up finding our apartment. It was the 6th of 8 of the last homes that I found myself without the agent with my own search. And again, that's why I go back to why I love DOSS. It's like, and Bobby says it's like having a real estate agent in your pocket. I say it's like having a real estate agent in the palm of your hand, because I can do so much of that search on my own before I have to speak to somebody. And that to me is the challenge, right? We're in a do-it-yourself generation. We're used to doing a lot of things ourselves. If I want a car, I go to Uber. If I want to rent a video, I just go to Netflix, right? If I want food, I go to Grubhub. And I don't have to talk to anybody until I'm ready to pick up my order, or until I want to talk to somebody, or until I want to go sit down at a restaurant and have a waited on by a waiter. And I think that's what, again, that's what drew me to DOSS, was this ability to be more self-directed and do it yourself, even when it comes to selling your home and having a menu of services rather than a one-size-fits-all solution.
And then your expertise, having come from real estate, the personal experience that you've had through the challenges of just, finding the different homes and the nuances of what you wanted and the specifics. You have such an understanding of the buyer, of the customer, which
Right.
must influence a lot of brilliant solutions in terms of how you're leading the company as the CEO, what you're leading it towards. What are some of the things that you're most excited about right now for DOSS?
Wow, it's a long list. I think it's the innovation. It's doing things differently. I call it always hashtag it the DOS difference. Again, I was with two brokers before I came to DOS. The second one was awesome because no bells and whistles, but I made 100% of my commission. But I had to pay for everything, the marketing. There was no name recognition. There was no website, no app. But it wasn't until I joined that company that I made my first six figures because I was able to tailor solutions according to my buyers and sellers. You have a house to sell? I might tell you, hey, why don't you try to sell it for sale by owner first? Or I might say, we really need to list it for 6%, and here's why. But I had the opportunity to do that. At DOS, we're allowing the seller to have a little bit more control in that process. And that benefits the agents. If I'm making 100% of my commission, which our top agents do, and actually once you are no longer a rookie new agent that needs the training and support, you're making 100% of your commission. Wow, I can deliver service second to none to my clients. I can also tailor commissions. I can give a rebate, or I can list at 1% according to what that seller or that buyer needs. And at most traditional brokerages, or I think all of them, you really don't have that ability to do that because they're still going to take their cut, whether it's 20, 30, 40% of the commission, they're still taking that cut no matter what you've charged the consumer.
Are there other, like you mentioned, and I love the metaphor because that's what makes it even more compelling and exciting. Grubhub for food, Netflix for movies, Ubers for cars, DOS for real estate.
Right.
Are there other players in this market, other innovators that you guys
I mean, there certainly are. I mean, Redfin is, but we've got at least two Redfin agents who are some of the first hires that have come over and joined DOS recently, which we're super excited about, and they're sharp. And I wanted Redfin to be good, but it's hard, and I think it's been hard to innovate in this market, and there's still this. You're beholden to this industry that's not been disruptive. You're having to play in an industry that often operates more like a cartel. In fact, it's interesting. There was a judge that recently ruled against a company that was trying to be innovative and told them they could no longer call the traditional industry a cartel. And I sent it to my husband, and my husband's like, but they are a cartel. I'm like, it operates like that. And it's not consumer friendly. It's not real estate agent friendly. And going back to what I love about DOS, what we're doing is that we are genuinely seeking to be both. You still have to play in that system. And I think that's where some of the innovators have not succeeded because they were trying to be too disruptive, and you can't innovate in a monopoly. It's hard to innovate in a monopoly. So you have to bridge that gap. And I think Bobby has done a really good job in bridging the gap between what's always been and the future. And the future is inevitable, right? Blockbuster fought Netflix for 13 years. Netflix didn't just show up and take over the marketplace. It was there for 13 years before it started to gain traction. And that's what we're seeing. We're playing in that middle ground, and we're really trying to be consumer friendly, but also agent friendly, because agents are the ones that are serving the consumer. So we offer agents a number of different options. Now, I'm CEO of DOS Social Agents. I do a lot of, I wear a lot of hats, right? In the startup world, you wear a lot of hats, but being CEO of Social Agents, it's an innovative option for real estate agents who, for whatever reason, don't want to be a realtor. They don't want to be a member of NAR. They don't want to personally interact with the transactions. We're matchmakers. They're connectors. And that's important for a number of reasons. One, when you become a new agent, it can take a year, 2 years to even start making money. You've got to learn the business. To really be good in this business, you've got to be educated. So an agent can get their license as a new agent, come over to Social Agents that cost them nothing. They don't have to pay NAR dues. They don't have to pay local association dues. They don't have to pay for MLS, for e-keys, all the different expenses that they don't teach you in real estate school. They just hold the shiny object up and say, you can be a realtor and make, $15,000 per transaction. Well, that's not true. because that would be gross. And there's so many hands in that $15,000, you may walk away with pennies at the end of the, at the end of the day. So this allows them to come and learn the business and to be matchmakers, right? To get in and learn the industry, to hold open houses, to help people determine, hey, who is the right selling agent for your home? What is the difference between DOSS and this traditional brokerage? I just did a referral and I gave the seller two different options. I said, we have a DOSS agent and we could list it. We don't have a DOSS agent immediately in this neighborhood. We don't have a DOSS agent with experience in this neighborhood or in this city yet. We're brand new. Here's another agent that just listed and sold a home for $15,000 more than listed in a few days. And I know she's a good agent. And so they listed with her. They'd actually been listed with the top company and hadn't sold. That price point was around $475. This agent listed it higher and sold it in 3 days. And so it was that kind of just helping the consumer take the confusion out of who to list with. So we're matchmakers. We help the social agents help buyers, sellers, renters connect with realtors that we know and trust are going to take care of them. And then we're kind of there to hold them accountable. I had a $1 million seller who called me yesterday. I'd given her to a great agent, but she had some issues with some things that the agent had done. But after we talked through it, she was able to understand that it wasn't, she was being bamboozled, that there wasn't a lack of transparency. It was just a communication issue. She got more than asking for her house. She got $350,000 more than she bought it with me just a few years ago. So she made a good return on their investment. So able to create that confusion, able to create those connections. And it's hard in this industry, right? We have 2 million real estate agents in the US. We have almost 5 million members of the National Association of Realtors. Last I checked, there were about 400,000 homes on the market. So how do you know who to trust? How do you know who is the condo specialist in Uptown versus the farm and ranch specialist in West Texas? Right? Because if you ask most realtors and you say, hey, I've got a farm and ranch, who should I list it with? They're going to say me. Have they sold a farm and ranch? Do they know anything about a farm and ranch? We can help buyers and sellers navigate that. And then again, we're helping the real estate agents build a nice business as a referral agent. I've got some people that are in the relocation industry that are DOSS social agents. And so they act more like a relocation agent or a relocation company.
The difficulty in innovating in the real estate space, is voice a specific solution to the innovation that you're able to do? I'm curious about why specifically voice is the solution here.
A number of different reasons. I mean, one, we're looking at the millennials, right? We're looking at who is up and coming, who are the next home buyers and sellers in the country, and it's millennials by far, and really anybody under the age of 50. It's probably not going to be as relevant for people my age and older, right? I don't even have a Lexus, and I'm scared to death of it. I don't want anybody hearing my conversations. But for somebody who loves that technology, or you've got your phone in your car, you're using Google and you pass a house and you see it and you want to ask DOSS, hey, tell me about this home, and I don't have to touch my phone, right? And I can not only ask, what about this house on the corner of, Magnolia and West Main, I can ask about the loan types that I might need, or does it already have offers, or is the kitchen updated? And I don't even have to look at the pictures at that point. And so it's probably a little bit of a novelty at this point, but I do think it's the way of the future, because there's so much that we're doing by voice. We're distracted, right? We're doing this, and we just are talking and getting our answers, and we're hearing them. We've got our ear pods in, and this way I can listen, and it's hands free.
What's interesting to you that DOSS is doing, that you're working on, that you're planning on, that you're seeing maybe that's 1 or 2 years ahead of where DOSS currently is?
Oh, that's a good question. And a number of things. Chris Norton, the COO, is such an innovator. He was in the film industry. He worked with Pixar. He's in digital. He saw all that was coming digital before it happened. So I think that piece of it is interesting. The technology we're creating through the app, the ability to search, as I know Bobby shared in his recent interview with you on just the ability to search very specifically according to pictures rather than just being limited to 4 bedrooms, 3 baths in this zip code. And so that's innovative. On the non-tech side, I think it's just, again, the choices that we're allowing people to have. We actually have something that will be released later. We're not there yet, but it's called DOSS It, where you can actually list your home as a for sale by owner. You can get the signs from Amazon in the future, or from Home Depot, from Lowe's, from just ordered online through our app. And you're going to be selling your home and you want people to know where to find it. So instead of that red and white sign in your front yard with your phone number scrawled on it, for free, you can put a DOSS It sign in there and they know to go to our website to find it. I was just speaking to a homeowner today, or to a landowner today, and I was interviewing agents for him. And we've kind of come to the conclusion that for this piece of property, because it's a unique property, we need to send it out to everybody, every realtor, every broker in that area who might have people looking, companies. It's great for like a paper company, somebody who's looking to grow trees, so they know about it. So instead of listing it at 10%, which is what they would list it for out there, because of that's just the going rate out there for a piece of land like this in the marketing, we're going to offer 4% to the brokers, and they get paid 4% if they bring a buyer. In DOSS, it would be a perfect option for something like that. You can put the sign on the side of the highway, people can pass it, they know exactly where to go to find that piece of property and to find out about it. And then we encourage the seller at that point to offer a commission to whoever does bring that buyer, because there's a lot of value to that. And so I think that's really ahead of its time, because you won't find that anywhere else. And I won't go into it today because it could take a whole nother hour. But NAR did something called Clear Cooperation. And it was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to some of the lawsuits and different things that were going on. Some of the lawsuits that had to do with the Sherman Act, with antitrust, with monopolies. And it just basically says you can't advertise a property until it's an MLS, except for within your own brokerage. Well, that really put sellers, agents, everybody at a disadvantage, because it really created more of a monopoly than it did prevent it. When I used to list homes, I would always tell the seller, hey, let's put it out on Facebook. Let me share it. I'll send an email out to all my agents from all the different brokerages to let them know that your home's coming on the market in case they have buyers in town this weekend while you're staging it, while you're decluttering. And probably 4 times out of 10, those homes sold. Right? Because there was somebody in town looking that weekend that wasn't going to be there, and they were desperate. They hadn't found anything else. Well, now I can't do that. Now agents can't do that. So they're only limited to their own brokerage. And that's creating a lot of different challenges that were unintended consequences to that rule. But DOSS It, it's not listed by us. It's in the homeowner's hands. Yet we can help the buyers know about these properties that are available if if an offer is made.
Do you see voice impacting every industry the way that it's impacting real estate? Is that something that you're thinking about, or you're very focused on the real estate for DOSS? Because it's such an interesting technology that you guys are world-class, years ahead of most industries.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting thing. It's certainly something that I think people will want to come to the website just to try it out. They may be Zillow fans. They may come check out DOSS just because they know its voice, and that's interesting. But, I do think, there's so many podcasts and industries around voice. It's clear that it's here to stay. It's going to be adapted. I don't think we fully know how it's going to be incorporated into our crazy, the Jetson-like future of our world that we can't even imagine yet. Who would have imagined every, phone call you had this year being a video call, right? Who would have imagined not going into the office?
Yeah.
And then the innovation that's happened around that, the collaboration that's happened around that. So I don't know what the future of voice is, other than that, then it certainly has a future.
Yeah. I love that reference of the new cultural norms. Even this whole Zoom podcast, I was like, is a complete normal. This is that become a cultural norm immediately is a fascinating reality that I think all of us culturally understand, that things can happen very quickly and become normal very quickly, and that we're adapting very quickly. That being said, yeah.
Well, I was going to say that's an interesting point because, like you said, the technology was there before COVID. The technology to work from home was there before COVID,
No one paid attention to it.
right?
Yeah.
The need to shift the real estate industry, the need to shift the relocation industry, the need to change things in other industries, it was there, right? The ability to make things easier to do from my phone was there. There just wasn't that need. COVID has highlighted and has fast tracked the need to do things differently.
Yeah, it's a very fascinating time. Um, One of the other things that I wanted to highlight, I've been processing my own journey and other colleagues, friends, new people that I meet. So you were in a corporate world. You worked in real estate. You decided to go full-time as a mother, moving a lot. Then you become a CEO of this super cool high-tech company, which is paving a big way for the future of the real estate industry. What would be your advice to people who have a question around, I'm wearing too many hats, or I'm switching roles, or my job is changing, in the ability to not so much change, but evolve? What would be your advice
Yeah.
to people?
Wow. I mean, I think personality types play a big thing into that. My husband's a corporate guy. He'll always be a corporate guy. Now, he is the smartest man I know. But to evolve and change the way I have is not going to be something he's ever comfortable with. So I think it's really listening, not listening to other people, it's knowing who you are. And I think one of the big things that came to me was I did when I was just frustrated. I was so frustrated. I was like a square peg in a round hole at this traditional industry. Nothing I did was right. Everything I did, I even had a manager at one point tell me I would never be successful doing things the way I did. And I was devastated. Um, and so I was talking to a friend of mine. She's a strength finders coach. Her name is Joanna Wiesinger. She said, do strength finders and let's kind of see what your strengths are. So I did the test, and my test, my strengths don't fall within the traditional corporate structure, right? It started to make everything make sense. I lead with ideation, which is the ability to innovate and look at the way things have always been done and see better ways to do it. I lead with connection, which is collaboration. This real estate industry is anything but collaborative, which is why I was always getting into trouble with agents. They thought I was trying to steal their business. I was just trying to make them better, and make connections for them. Um, I lead with strategy. Well, when you're listing at 6%, always at 6% and doing the way, there's no strategy involved. And there were a couple of other things. And that all of a sudden made sense to me. And it took away the fear. So that would be the first thing I would say, is to really, take a strength finders test, tap into what makes you special, what makes you unique, and then find a place that appreciates that. Find other people, surround yourself with other people that appreciate that. Another person that I mentioned this morning was a gentleman by the name of Carl Slade, and I was looking for his podcast that first really challenged me. It was called Blue Ocean Strategy. There's a book by the same name, and that was what his podcast was on. He's an innovative real estate agent in New Zealand, brilliant man. And he just talks about, create your own blue ocean. Don't try to be like everybody else. And in the real estate industry, that's key. Define who you are, your niche. And that would be for any industry, whether you're an insurance salesman, a car salesman. Do things differently than the other 20 people that you're surrounded by and competing with. Don't try to compete, be different. And then the third thing was Bob Berg's book, The Go-Giver, which I mentioned is on our website. I read that book shortly after leaving this top brokerage, where I was devastated because I had helped her for sale by owner. My manager told me I would never be successful doing that. And I was brokenhearted because I knew I had done the right thing for the consumer, but I was questioning, would I ever be able to have that kind of business philosophy and be successful? And my goal was to not only be successful, my goal was to exceed my husband's salary so he could retire and I could be the breadwinner for the next 10, 20 years. And that's really one of my whys. And I read The Go-Giver. And have you read the book?
No.
Okay. Next on your list.
Okay.
And Bob Berg's a great interview too. I've interviewed him on my podcast. And I realized that the way I approach business is actually a successful business philosophy. And that gave me the ability, that gave me the courage to do things differently, to listen to what Carl Slade was saying and go, you know what, he's built a successful business going against the norms. And it also gave me the ability to look at somebody like Bobby Bryant and go, yeah, he doesn't look like any of these other brokerages out here. He's doing something kind of scary. It's go big or go home. But you know what? I'd rather try and fail than not have tried. again, that goes back to the personality types. You have to have that type of personality. You have to play within where you are on the edge of being comfortable. You don't want to go too outside of your comfort zone because you won't be successful, but you need to be outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So those would be my 3 kind of tips.
I love that. Strength finder, find where you're appreciated, know who you are, like really strong. That's very strong. I'm also curious as a mother, I'm a father of 3 girls,
Oh, fun.
everything, they're everything.
Yeah.
I'm curious how that fits into you as a parent or as a mother. Is that also how you parent or how you look at your children in terms of
That's a
the
good
strength,
question.
appreciation, know who you are?
We always said we parented our children differently. We didn't parent them the same. What is the saying? Fair is where you go and get cotton candy and ride rides. That's a fair. That's a fair, right? There's no such thing as fair. And so we parented all 4 kids differently because there were 4 different kids. We've actually had them all do strength finders, and that taught us so much. We have a kid that leads with competition, and we have another kid that leads with what is it? I'll think about it in a minute, but it's the opposite of competition. He wants everybody to get along.
Mm-hmm.
You parent those 2 kids differently,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because what motivates the kid that loves competition is not going to motivate the kid harmony. That's what he leads with, harmony. He doesn't want to win. He just wants to be a contributing team member. And so you motivate those kids differently. So yeah, we did parent them a little differently. And then, and we looked to help them succeed in where they could be successful. We sacrificed time, money, effort to help each one of them kind of find their own unique place in the world, in the family, education. Some went to private schools, some went to public schools, some homeschooled. I mean, yeah, so we were always tailoring and pivoting, adapting to where we were, our stage of life, where we had just moved, what their passions were. And not easy, but it's certainly not a one size fits all. And so, but I think, again, that fits who I am, and that ideation of how can we do this better? How can I, improve on what my parents did? My parents were great, but looking at, well, how could I, how would I like to have been parented differently? And that was what I came up with. I would have liked to have been parented differently. So.
How differently? I mean, I heard what you said, but how is it
Yeah.
different how you were parented?
More being told what to do, how to do it, being protected from making mistakes, and not being heard or understood. And again, had great parents. But here's a silly example. My mom used to say, well, why aren't you going out on Friday night? Like your friends, like that's strange that you don't want to go out. And I'm like, I don't want to go out. I wasn't trying to fit in. I didn't want to fit in. Which is funny enough, because I think I'm very much an extrovert, but I think then I was more of an introvert, or maybe I was just insecure. And instead of embracing that and going, you know what, let's go do dinner, or let's go on a weekend trip or something. So just not hearing and accepting that was okay. And so I think with my kids, accepting that things that they did differently, things they thought differently, were okay if they were indeed okay, and kind of letting them explore and be who they are, and then make mistakes, right? And choose a school that we didn't think was best. Or we homeschooled. I loved homeschooling, but when they were asking to go to school or trying something different, I wasn't going to be that mom that was like, yeah, we're only homeschooling. We let them. At one point, I had 2 kids at home. I had 1 kid in private school and 1 kid in public school. Don't recommend that, but it was where we were in our stage of life, and just how it worked out that year. And it was the right thing for them at that point.
It's so interesting thinking about, I speak with my mother a lot about how she was raised. I definitely think about how I raise my kids, think about them, and consider how they might raise their kids. And it's not just the generational personalities, but it's also the culture. It's also the technology. It's like a convergence of multi-levels of cultural shifts, of technology shifts, of generational patterns that the next generation is experiencing. I think Ask DOSS is clearly part of that. The companies that we're building are part of that. But it's so fascinating, and I think one of the most valuable things is to convey these thoughts as they're happening in real time, like the podcast. That being said, do you ever consider writing a book? Considering your history, your stories, your mother, career, CEO of DOSS.
Hasn't everybody thought about writing a book? I don't think I'm different in that, but yeah, I do have several kind of outline ideas, and they are, like I say, outline. It's like a page of ideas. Would love to do a TED talk at some point on, again, inspiring women to stay home if they want to stay home, or the man, right? I mean, my goal is for my husband not to work past the age of 55. He's younger than I am. He will, because that's in his DNA. He loves working. He loves what he does. Um, but the ability to take time off and do what matters most to you. And for me, it was my kids. And for me, it was being part of my husband's success. So you have to be in a partnership that values that, where your spouse values the role that you play as part of their success. And I think it's been interesting talking even to my daughter, saying that it's challenging to date now because men want to know you make as much money as they do, that you're going to be as successful as they are, or you feel like you need to marry a man that's as successful as you are. And I think that's setting a marriage up or a relationship up for failure, because then it becomes competitive rather than a partnership, a team, right? We don't need two CEOs in our family, right? We don't need two chiefs running, two of us being corporate slaves, and we don't need two of us being entrepreneurs. That's tough. You can, I think it would be hard. And then for me to be able to support him in doing that was a gift. So I would love to have that talk or that book to encourage people to drown out the noise of what they think they should be true to themselves, because you can pick it up and start over. We're in a brave new world, right? We are, even LinkedIn has recently done a big push for helping people bridge those resume gaps where they stayed at home to parent. And this year you had to stay at home. A lot of people had to stay at home to parent, right? And they were doing Zoom calls with kids playing on the floor and doing their classwork in the room next door. It's hard to balance both of those things. So if you can take the opportunity, and I'm telling you, it costs a lot of money for most moms to work, right? Or if a mom is working and is more successful than the husband or the partner, maybe that partner, that male partner, should think about, hey, let me stay at home and run the household for a couple of years. Let her go soar. And let me make the household soar. Let me make the kids soar. Again, there's nothing wrong with both of you doing it. But if your heart is leading you to go against what the society is telling us that defines success, and be a stay-at-home mom or dad, you'll never regret that time. And I really think, especially if you're an innovator, maybe not if you're more like my husband. I don't think he could have ever done that. That would have just not been in his DNA. But if you're more of an innovator, if you're more entrepreneurial, it's a great opportunity to be able to do. And I think if you sit down with pen and paper and look at your finances, you can find the way to cut out the money that will make it possible to make the sacrifices you need to do to stay at home. And then get back to it when you're ready, whether that's 6 months from now or 6 years from now.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. I could listen to you for many more hours. I want to finish with two last questions. I appreciate you opening up, but for whatever reason, I'm very spontaneous. So I heard a few different things that you've said throughout about your husband. How do you think you've gotten? So it sounds like you and your husband have this incredible relationship for a long time, and you guys have gone through a lot. What would you say is the secret there? To such a flourish?
Well, you set that up and you don't even know about this. So we're actually involved in a marriage ministry called The Significant Marriage. A dear friend and mentor that I met in Vienna 30 years ago, she and her husband, who's an engineer, she's a family and family and marriage counselor. He's an electrical engineer from India. She's American. And they ended up getting married later in life. And it's a second marriage for both of them. And they ended up writing this marriage seminar called The Significant Marriage. And David and I went to it just to support them, thinking we've been married 20 years, we're good. And they were doing it in Switzerland. They were wanting to start it in Europe. And so we went to it just to support my friend. We loved it. And my husband in particular loved it. And he was the one that didn't want to go. He was just going to support me because it was a business plan for your marriage. All these things. Think about when you have a business, you have a business plan, you have a mission statement, you have goals that you have every year. And then you go back at the end of the year and you look and see, how did you meet those goals, right? You have a plan. Who does that in marriage? We had actually done that. My husband had done that on our 10-year anniversary. long story, but after he had been developing all of his team members and had been doing different things with them and and I'm like, you know what, you spend more time developing your team members and taking them on dates. Like he was arranging like different events with them that catered to what they love, whether it was golfing, whether it was going to an art gallery or whatever. And he was just trying to develop relationships, personal relationships with them outside of the business. I said, you spend more time developing them than you do your own family. Ow, right? That hurt him to the core. And so he kind of created that for us. And then when we found out that Mary and Dave had taken that to a total different level, anyway, long story, but we ended up getting involved. When we lived in Frankfurt for those 4 years, we hosted the first one in Frankfurt. We had couples that attended that went to Paris, and then they started in Paris, and now it's in Latvia, the Ukraine. It's in, I think, 10, 12 different countries in Europe. We've gone back since then to help lead it. We led it in Dallas. And interestingly enough, one of my relocation clients recently attended, or two of my relocation clients recently attended. One of them is very good friends with Nick Vujicic and his wife, Kanae, if you know who they are.
Yeah.
No arms and no legs. And so he came to it with his wife.
Wow.
They loved it so much. They just helped us host one last month here in Dallas. And it was
Wow.
amazing. And it was amazing to see somebody like that with that kind of influence and with that kind of business mind to look at this and go, this is game changing for marriage. So you just hit on the why behind what I do. So sorry I went into that so long that you got more of an answer than you wanted, but I'm passionate about that, right? You move, it's tough on a marriage, right? You're working, you have kids, it's tough on a marriage. And so you've got to have a business plan in place. And the significant marriage really helps couples do that, in addition to creating a purpose outside of just their marriage, of having, you know, a happy marriage, a good marriage with a house with a white picket fence. That's not going to give anybody fulfillment. What gives us fulfillment is giving back, is having a sense of purpose. And so that's part of that seminar that we do, is helping people discover that purpose, not only together, but also separately, and having the spouse, the partner, support their partner in whatever purpose it is that they feel that they have.
Very inspiring. Beautiful. I'm happy I asked that. Obviously had no idea. And I'm going to look that up afterwards. Very cool. And very moving and very meaningful. What would you say to finish off is your purpose or your goal or your why over the next few years, given that you've accomplished so much? You've raised this incredible family, have this incredible marriage, and now growing this incredible game-changing company. What are you focused on? What are you excited about? What are you looking forward to? What's your big why moving forward?
I mean, you know, professionally, it's having a small part to play in changing the real estate industry, and impacting the way people move, making this more transparent, more consumer friendly, with less friction. We just bought a house a few months ago, and again, in the middle of the process, my husband said, "This is the most convoluted, silly process. Just everything from even just the search to the different agents we had to speak to." Just the whole process, the lender, the title company, you just begin to see this is not operating the way it could be operating in the 21st century. So being able to play a small piece in that, being able to help real estate agents be successful, right? You have single moms out there. You have people that they need to make money in this business in order to support a family, in order to support themselves, in order to support their lifestyle, making sure that they're successful. I love how DOSS is setting our agents up, including our new agents, for success, as opposed to the old industry, which really is, they are beholden to, they're making money off of the agents. That is part of their bread and butter. That is why we have 2 million real estate agents in the US. That is why there's 1.5 million members of NAR, not because they're needed, but because they're propping up this outdated industry, because they're taking in all these different fees and broker fees and commission splits and association dues. And it's on the backs of real estate agents that's sustaining this business. And they're selling hopes and dreams that most people, 87% of real estate agents fail within 5 years, right? That is not an industry that is setting people up for success. And it's also not an industry that is seeking to serve the consumer. In fact, when I left my brokerage, it was after I helped this for sale by owner, and my manager found out about it. And I only helped him because he was the fire chief of my town, and he didn't want to list with an agent because he didn't know who to choose. And his house was priced right. He just needed a few tweaks with his marketing, and he needed a sign that said pool in the front yard. So I went to MetroTax. I got him a sign that said pool. It cost me $2, and helped him just give them some ideas to market the house better. It sold, and an agent called my manager to tell me that I'd helped this gentleman sell his home. And she said, Lindy, if you do that, we can't pay for our lights. We can't pay for our building. And that was the light bulb moment of, okay, so I'm not in this industry, or you're not in this industry. This industry is not about serving consumers. This industry is about serving itself. And that's business, right? I mean, we're all in the business to make money. But if I can't do it to serve consumers first, if I can't do it to, again, going back to Carl Slade, he has a great quote. He says, leave the consumer, the home buyer, the home seller better off than they would have been without you. And that's been kind of my guiding philosophy in order to be able to do that. And I'm sorry, I forgot the question. So I hope I didn't go off track. Where do I want to leave the industry? That's where I want to leave the industry, is to make it better for the consumer and the agents that serve them, because they work hard.
Yeah. And that's a big why. That's a great why. And it's very needed. So I'm excited for everything that DOSS is. I'm honored to have the privilege of meeting with you and speaking with you. Thanks so much for taking the time. And where can people learn more about you and learn more about DOSS? And when is the book coming out?
Yeah. The book's going to be a while. I have a lot on my plate right now. So you can connect with me at my email, which is lindy.chapman@socialagents.com. Go to askdoss.com. You can even get on there and ask to be a beta tester for the technology, which is still in beta testing, but will be released soon. We have a waiting list, but we really want to get it out there. It's operated by AI. So the more people we have using it, the smarter it gets. And so LinkedIn is the best place to connect with me. Just go to Lindy Chapman, or hashtag not your realtor, because that was a hashtag that I used a lot. So you can find a lot of my, or you can even hashtag Relo Talk, which was my podcast. I had early ability to use LinkedIn Live as a beta tester. So did a lot of things with that. So I would say LinkedIn is probably the best place to connect with me and find out more about what we're doing.
Awesome. Thanks so much for taking the time. Great meeting you, Lindy.
Thank you. Privilege is all mine. Thanks so much.